Hello, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. It is a gray, rainy day here in Portland, Oregon. I'm hanging out in my front sunroom with all of my family basically downstairs with me. 4 kids and 2 dogs, actually 3 dogs because we're dog sitting for my sister. So there may be some ambient noise in this video. Hope you can still hang with me because I have a really important thing I want to discuss today. Now, a lot of times I talk about very practical garden skills, permaculture design principles, and how we apply them out in our gardens, in our homesteads, our farms, in order to have more successful and sustainable food production. But permaculture doesn't just have design principles, it also has an overarching set of 3 ethics and kind of a hidden 4th ethic. I have a video on that you can check out. Today I want to focus in particular on the 3rd ethic of permaculture because it can be phrased many different ways, and I think each of those kind of phrasings have really different connotations, and it really shifts how we view the 3rd ethic. Now, originally, Bill Mollison called the 3rd ethic of permaculture set limits to population and consumption, which is really loaded, and I don't want to totally unpack all of that today. But over time, it evolved into 2 kind of main ways of viewing the 3rd ethic. So we had the first ethic, earth care, 2nd ethic, people care. Nice and rhymey. The 3rd ethic became fair share, right? Set limits to population and consumption, return resources, return the surplus. All of that can be encapsulated in that nice little quippy phrase, fair share. Earth care, people care, 3rd ethic, fair share. Much less clunky than set limits to consumption and population and get those extra resources cycled back into the system. Just a lot neater and tidier. So this rebranding of the 3rd ethic as fair share really appealed to a lot of people. What does that mean, fair share? What does it mean for us to make sure that everybody has enough and nobody is hoarding resources that should be cycled back? If we are really practicing earth care and people care, we must inevitably be practicing fair share. Seems pretty logical. And if you sit and think about what fair share means, there are some really good deep dives into that topic. So that 3rd ethic being called fair share caused some problems for some folks. Over the last decade or so, more and more folks who are maybe more of that libertarian prepper mindset have trickled into permaculture or have taken elements of permaculture that really appeal to them and folded them into their other philosophies. And that phrase fair share sounded a lot like the dreaded S word, socialism. And so that caused a lot of pushback from a certain segment of the permaculture community. I would say probably mostly Americans. And because of that, the term fair share got rebranded once again as share the surplus, right? The idea is that if you have extra, you want to give it back to the system or give it to those in need. Share the surplus has much more of a voluntary, oh, I have some extra of this that I don't need and I will pass it along, implication than fair share, which sounds, I think, a little bit more like someone is imposing limits to you, which is exactly what the 3rd ethic was initially, set limits to population and consumption. So those phrases, fair share and share the surplus, have kind of been bounced around depending on what your bent is in permaculture. Do you lean a little bit more community care or do you lean a little bit more individualistic? So in 2014, renowned permaculture thinker and writer Starhawk rebranded the 3rd ethic once again, and this time she called it future care. And I really want to dive into that for a moment because I think that folks in permaculture have pretty divided ideas about that proposed change to the 3rd ethic. Now, I'm not in any way going to dig on or diminish Starhawk's article. In fact, I've linked to it below and I really encourage you to go read it. In general, I'm a big fan of her writing, and although we don't always agree on everything, I feel that she has a lot of really thoughtful things to say, and I thought that this idea of future care, as she presented it, makes a lot of sense. So, she's talking in 2014. This is, nowadays 2014 seems like maybe a little bit more of a simple and idealistic time, a little bit more of a hopeful time, but she talks about a sense of hopelessness and a lack of purpose and a sense of frustration and powerlessness that folks felt back then. mostly because climate change is real. We're looking at peak oil. And I would say those of us now in 2023 are looking at late stage capitalism, and we're looking at really intense political volatility, and we're looking at wars around the world. And it's just a really difficult time now in 2023, but also in 2014 it was as well. And so she was trying to infuse this sense of hope for the future. So when she talks about the third ethic, instead of saying fair share, saying future care gives us this kind of forward-looking mentality, right? It says there's hope for our children. There's hope for the planet. The planet's not screwed. It's not going to all burst into flame. There's hope for humanity. We shouldn't die out as a species. Future care means I need to think beyond my own personal, momentary, in this present moment sense of hopelessness and powerlessness. And I need to expand the way that I'm thinking into the future. And that the things I'm doing now need to have a positive impact in the future as well. And I think that's a really great way to look at it. I talk a lot about how earth care and people care mean that we're not only caring for the earth right now, we're not only caring for, workers around the world right now and our neighbors, but we're also looking at the way that we are impacting future generations. And so future care is a really nice way to think about that. However, I think there's some problems with taking fair share and limiting it only to future care. I actually asked in a permaculture Facebook group this week what other people thought, because I thought, am I the only one who just has a lot of feelings about using the term future care as a replacement for fair share? And what I found is that the folks who were really kindly willing to engage with me in that thread had a lot of the same thoughts that I did. So I think Starhawk had this one notion of what future care is. And I think she had lots of great ideas. And it's good to have that forward thinking view and also to have that forward momentum, right? And future care is a way of helping us move forward into the future, think about the future, plan for the future, and not get bogged down with the sense that everything is going to shit right now. However, I have seen the term future care taken up by that section of permaculture enthusiasts who have very much more of a isolationist homestead prepper mentality. And I actually was thinking about this a lot when I was watching The Last of Us the other day, where that sense of storing up for our own personal future, that like I need to prepare for the future. I need to hoard resources because I am making sure I'm taking care of my homestead and my household in the future. And also future care being my obligation is to set my children up for the future. My own little, fiefdom, my own lineage is what matters, that I need to make sure my offspring are taken care of. And I think it's really good to want to care for your children. I think it's really good to want to make sure that your kids are prepared for the future and that your kids have access to resources that they need. But what I've seen in that phrase future care is that it has become really, navel gazing isn't the right word, but it's become really insular and this really narrow focus to me, my property, my children. I'm preparing for me, my own future self, and I'm preparing for my children and their future. And in that way, future care sort of negates the whole idea of fair share. If we're hoarding resources for our own future, that is in opposition to the idea of redistribute resources back to the system and people that need it right now. And the idea that we're only caring about our children negates the people care aspect of all of humanity matters. All people deserve a high quality of life and deserve not to be exploited. So for me, I'm kind of two minds about it. There's the way that Starhawk presents the notion of future care that I think is really nice. And then there's the way that I see it kind of get used in real life, in like homesteady YouTube channels or people on like Permies forums and things like that. And for me, I would love to dive in more. I've talked about the third ethic a little bit in the future about why the third ethic just causes so many people to get their hackles up. But when we say future care, what I think is important to remember is that the third ethic of permaculture absolutely includes future care. We cannot be so focused on today that we forget that we are leaving something for those that come after us. And we want that something to be kindness, and we want that something to be in line with permaculture ethics, and we want that something to be a blessing and a gift to those who come after us and to the planet itself. There's more than just what we see in front of us and the people that are around us right now that matters, but that's not all that fair share is. And when we are only focused on the future, we really can limit ourselves to the aspects of fair share that matter right now, like mutual aid, like making sure that we care for those in need right now. And so I don't know what your thoughts are on that rebranding of the third ethic of fair share as future care, but from my own perspective, I would just encourage you to say, when you think about all that fair share encapsulates, make sure that it includes future care, but is not limited to that. I would love to hear your thoughts on what you think fair share includes beyond future care. And if you have a different name for it, why is it that we have such a hard time having a name that accurately describes what Bill Mollison meant when he described the third ethic, what Dave Holmgren intends for the third ethic, and how the third ethic interweaves with the first two and supports them? Why is it so hard for us to come up with a little quippy phrase that helps us think about it appropriately? Why does it get people so worked up? Why does it evoke such strong emotions that I don't really see when we talk about earth care and people care? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. I know that I can't always reply to everybody, but I read all of the comments and they're really thought-provoking and help shape the way that I think about permaculture, the way I think about other people who engage in permaculture, and the way that I'm shaping this channel as well. So thank you all. I will be back really soon. Please check out the link in the description to Starhawk's original article. So thank you for watching today. I am sorry that my neighbor who has a leaf blowing for a hobby has started doing it at the end of this video. I hope you can't hear it in the background. I hope it's been okay. Please check out my Patreon and other ways that you can support the work of this channel down in the description. I will be back later this week. I am working on a series on climate justice and climate injustice, and so that will be coming out later this week, as well as some practical things I'm doing out in my garden. Thanks again. Bye.